So this is a quick tutorial on how to optimize your WordPress speed. As you know, or as some of you know, WordPress is a CMS, a content management system, which helps you organize and manage your content, images, text, photos, videos, everything within a very easy system based on templates. So WordPress uses actually PHP and SQL, and it requires two servers in order to do this task. So here I'm going to show you my actual server. This is my FTP account, and you can see all my content. It's a bunch of PHP files. These files are part of the template. Within them, there is very little content. Most of the content is allocated in databases in a separate server. So basically what WordPress does, it connects your template with the database content. Database content is usually text from your blog post articles, your image locations, and all this stuff is usually allocated in the PHP database, which is the big amount of stuff. On the FTP servers, you basically have the template files and your content, like images. For example, here I have a lot of JPEG files, and all this stuff is allocated here on the server. This part of the server holds only, the rough content. The PHP holds the text, and all the stuff that's going to be printed or served on my template. So once you understand this basic stuff, let's go now straight to the chase. So here, this is my dashboard. As you can see, I have the latest version of WordPress, the 4.3, and as of October 15th. So here, as you can see, I'm going to go to the updates section. My dashboard is a little bit slow because some of the plugins I'm running are a little bit slow in the backend. Here are some of the templates I have tested. So far, I am just using this template here called the minimalist. It's the theme, minimalist theme. As the name says, it's a very minimalistic theme. It's very light in code, and it loads pretty fast. And here I have one plugin that I have in standby. It's a Cloudflare. It's a CDN plugin. I'll talk about that later. So let's check the most important thing about this tutorial is your plugin optimization. Plugins are an essential part of your WordPress install. All your websites depend a lot on plugins because they offer certain functionality that your WordPress install doesn't come with. But there must be a balance between the amount of plugins you have and your WordPress site. In my case, I have learned through more than 10 years of experience that the simpler, the better. Here I have activated 12 plugins. Among them, I have the Disqus comment system. This is a plugin offered by Disqus. As you know, it's a system that is a centralized comment system you can use universally almost on every site that has this system. It's very easy to install. The disadvantage is that it uses JavaScript and it can be a little bit slow to load, but it works pretty well. At least it looks better than the original native solution of comments of your WordPress. The other plugin I would like to comment, which is one of the important plugins for your optimization and speed and the speed increase of your site, is the EWWW Image Optimizer. This is image optimizer, as the name says. It's very obvious, but what it does, it basically compresses all your image content in your WordPress. The cool thing about this one is that it does it automatically. Once you install it, it's basically plug and play. You download the plugin, install it, activate it, and then you do the initial manual optimization, which is a bulk optimization of all the images you have on your content folders, and it compresses all the images. Then, after the first optimization, every time you upload a new blog post or a new image, it compresses it automatically. So you don't have to worry about coming back to the plugin and doing the compression again. It's very easy to install and very easy to use a plugin. I highly recommend. I used to use the one offered by Yahoo, but I found this one simpler and better. Basically, these plugins do the same thing, and I haven't had any errors so far. Okay. So image optimization is very important because images use a lot of space and a lot of bandwidth, and compressing them can really help your speed, your website speed. Here are some plugins. As you can see, are deactivated. The Google Tag Manager. I used this plugin before because it was an automatic way of, or the shortcut to install the Google Analytics and the Google Tag Manager script. But I found that directly installing it into my header file was easier, and I didn't have to depend on a plugin. You know, simpler the better. The less you can depend on plugins, the better your website is going to run. So I'm going to go to the other compression plugin, which is the W3 Total Cache. This is a pretty popular plugin and is one of the most complete versions or complete plugins in cache optimization there is in WordPress. This is pretty popular. It's been around for a couple of years. And as you can see, it has very detailed page optimization that goes from your page, you know, CSS minifying, database cache, object cache, browser cache, CDN, which is the content delivery network, varnish, monitor, and all this stuff, which is very useful. Default configuration or default setup of this plugin is very straightforward. For the user that's a beginner, you know, installing it's very easy. Just installing the plugin, enabling your plugin, and then clicking here to delete the actual server cache or browser cache. This will refresh, you know, all the content of your website and serve the new content. It's really cool because it allows your website to first compress your CSS and HTML files, which, you know, it eliminates a lot of redundancy in the code. It also eliminates a lot of white space. So for example here, I'm going to show you the page source. As you can see, the code is crammed all over the place. You can see that there's almost no white space, and it's very, you know, it's just a couple scrolls down. The original uncompressed version is much longer, and it has much more redundancy in the code. You have to be very careful with the W3 and with any cache plugin, since this one's usually it's an automatic compression and it can compress things it should not compress. So that's why it has a debugging mode, and it has also a preview mode, so you can preview your website and see that everything, all the functionality is working properly. In my case, the Adsense ads are not displaying, probably because this JavaScript is being compressed in the wrong way. I did a tweak a couple minutes ago, and I've noticed that it's not working pretty well. It might be an Adsense server problem, or it might be a compression problem, or a problem with my template. I'll have to do testings after this. I'm gonna check this one. This is an article I wrote recently, and you know, the Adsense ad is not loading. I'll have to check that out. So these are one of the things that might happen with your cache plugins. They might compress stuff they are not meant to compress, and it can bring some trouble. In my case, it's just the Adsense, but it could be a gallery, it could be, you know, the article navigation, the whole site navigation, it could be a widget, it could be a logo, you never know. So that's very important to preview your website, you know, and try to test and tweak it all around to see that everything is working properly before, you know, deploying the cache functionality all over the place. So let's go over the main things in this plugin. So the page cache. So basically what this does is that it caches your website in the web server. It stores a current version of this website onto your server, and it helps, you know, the loading of the website. Since this is using database and content, it reduces the loading time and the connection between both parties. It makes it very easy for the end user to navigate on your website. Minifying is another technique that's used that basically compresses HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML compression is straightforward. Also CSS, since it's basically, text that's usually very redundant, it basically compresses very easily. JavaScript can be a little bit tricky, and sometimes when you're using a plugin that uses some specific or complex JavaScript, it might not load. So you gotta be very careful with the JavaScript compression. It uses these techniques here, the HTML minifier, the JS minifier, and the CSS minifiers. I basically use the default options, which are pretty straightforward. It also has object cache. It stores this cache in the disk. I don't really know what it does because I haven't researched this deeply, but basically it does a different sort of cache using one of the elements of your website. Then the browser cache. This is very important because the browser cache is basically the user cache, the end user cache, where the website is stored. Every time a user visits your website for the first time, the site loads for the first time and stores the content in the browser. Using the browser cache guarantees that the next time your user visits your website, it would load faster. So it does this by doing an HTTP compression and decreasing the header size to reduce the server load. CDN. The CDN is the Content Delivery Network. It's basically a technique where websites are stored in the server closest to the user. This is a solution that's usually paid. There is a free solution that's called Cloudflare. I used to use that one, but they don't have servers all over the world, and the free version has its limitations. It works pretty well in countries where the Cloudflare is pretty strong, like in London, or the UK, Canada, and the United States. But for example, in some countries in Europe, like Spain, Portugal, China or Japan, the Cloudflare might not work that well. However, there are other CDNs which are much more professionalized, like Akamai or the Amazon cloud services, which have servers all over the place. However, they will charge you per bandwidth, and it might result pretty expensive. So, if you're not doing professional stuff, your site speed, if your income doesn't depend on your site speed, it's not that dramatic. I don't really recommend using a CDN. It's a very expensive solution. Normal server loading times without CDN are acceptable. Usually bandwidth connections are pretty fast nowadays. And this is stuff I haven't used so far. These are part of the W3 premium version. I'm using the free version, which is it's quite enough for what I need. So I've shown you two basic plugins that you need. The EWWW Image Compression, which is a necessary plugin. Many people upload pictures from Google or from their camera straightforward up to the server, and they are not even aware that this image might be even heavier than the website. It's very important to compress them because it makes it load much faster on the end user. So in order to test and see and verify that everything is working properly, I recommend two plugins for testing your website performance. One of them is the GT Metrix here. This plugin is offered for free by this company. They have a premium version for people that need extensive testing, but this one tests everything I need. This is my latest test result. It's pretty cool because it shows this dashboard with the two scores from the main search engines. Page speed is the Google search engine testing system, and YSlow is the Yahoo search engine testing criteria. Both of them are similar, but they have the differences. But at the moment, I'm just going to worry about the Google. Now, many people use Yahoo nowadays, so for me, optimizing for Google is just enough. You can have a detailed report and this link on a separate website. I'll show you that later. Here you can see the locations where you can test your website. You can use the server that's closest to your place. And here is basically the history of my testing. So far, I'm doing pretty well. So in the detail report, you can see, the geek stuff, all this stuff that's making your site slower. In my case, since I have a 94% score, I basically have optimized my website up to, to the point where there is very little room for improvement. If I want to improve this one, it would just add a couple of microseconds to my website loading time. At the moment, it's taking 5.5 seconds to load. It's not bad, but the average, it's below the average, which is pretty good. And the total page size is just a little bit over a megabyte. For a website with a lot of pictures, I think it's not bad. So let's check this one, just to give you an idea. Here we have a URL that shows me the JavaScript that's giving me trouble. This is basically a test of the JavaScript on my website that was found by the GT metrics. In this case, it seems it is a Google Ads double-click URL. It seems that it is a ad server URL. Basically, the Adsense banner. As you can see, here's the banner. The JavaScript is not loading for some reason. Well, here it's loading, as you can see. But this JavaScript, is something that I am actually using to monetize my website. Yes, I'm not actually making a lot of money with this, but I'm just testing it. I'm seeing how much income, how much revenue I can make with this one. At the moment, I'm making a couple pennies a month. But with the GT metrics, you can actually see if the impact of these banners is actually impacting your revenue. In my case, I don't think it is, because it's basically a couple of kilobytes that's preventing my website to load faster. And there is no way to compress this JavaScript. If I compress this JavaScript, probably my ads won't load, which is happening at the moment. Okay, so let's check the other ones. Specify image dimensions. This is geeky stuff. Some people like to specify image dimensions. I don't really feel like doing that every time I upload an image, but as you can see here, there are not that many images that need that kind of specification. Image optimization also, there are a couple of images that I cannot compress more beyond what they are already compressed, probably because of the format, some PNG, some JPEGs. They are already compressed to the limit, but the gains are very minimal. A couple bits here, I could say 800, not even a kilobyte here, so this is very geeky stuff that focusing on this stuff would just be a waste of time. But the stuff I really want to focus on the GT metrics, and the stuff I want to see is the rough stuff, the main core of my website, which is the HTML and CSS and the image content. So as you can see here, I have all great perfect scores in CSS compression, in HTML minification, in gzip compression, in some JavaScript. All this stuff is working perfectly, and this is the stuff that really makes your website slower. Here, as you can see, I scored 100%, nothing to do here. So in my case, I've been optimizing this website for the last year, and at the moment there is very little room for improvement. Before doing all the optimizations I have done for the last year, my website was loading, twice as slower. Took twice as much time to load, and probably the page size was much bigger. So this is basically the way I have optimized my website. The other plugin I would like to introduce to you is the P3. This is a plugin that tells you backend optimization and plugin optimization. Plugins are one of the most bandwidth taxing things on your WordPress. People nowadays, they depend a lot on plugins, even to add a Google Analytics code, to add a banner to the website, to add a favicon to the website, to change the copyright link of the website. For everything, depending too much on plugins is going to tax your website's performance. My recommendation is to keep it simple. Use as less plugins as you can. So in order to understand which plugins are really giving me trouble, I've downloaded this plugin. It's called the P3. I'm going to do a quick scan, and as you can see here, there is a breakdown of the plugins that are using the most resources. Ironically, the W3 total cache is using the most. This is because this P3 plugin also runs tests on the backend resources used on the website. Backend resources don't really impact the front end. So W3 is using a lot of resources in the backend, but in the front end, it's compressing and doing all its job as it should be doing. Okay, so I'm not gonna worry too much about this one. The other plugin that I'm seeing that's using a lot of resources is the WordPress backup to Dropbox. This is a plugin or a script that's running in the background and that connects to Dropbox and sends my updates every now and then to my Dropbox, saving basically my whole website on Dropbox. This is using a lot of resources. But at the moment, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to delete this plugin because I don't need it anymore, since my server is storing my website content and my databases. So I don't really need to back up my website, so I can just disable and delete this one. It's very important that where you're not using a plugin, you should delete it, because it also uses bandwidth resources in your website, and you never know what script could be running on your deactivated plugin. Another risk that you can run with installing plugins is that some developers can install malicious or advertising adware or adware into your website using these plugins. They might be unnoticeable, small links, add links to their websites, malicious banners, tracking software bandwidth, stealing software, and all this kind of stuff. So I highly recommend you install only plugins that are highly reviewed and are certified that they're not going to install any harmful adware or software into your server. This could bring a lot of problems, and they could make it easier to have a security breach in your server, and it could destroy all your content. So be careful with that. In my case, I'm just going to delete this plugin, which is not really giving me any actual solution. The third one is the Gravity Forms. Gravity Forms is an advanced form that uses a lot of resources because it's a form that uses JavaScript and it's much prettier, and it has more functionality than the normal and simpler forms. I'm using this one just for the contact, but I'm probably gonna disable it because I'm not getting I'm not getting contacted that much, and the Gravity form is not really bringing any value in the house. It's basically using a lot of bandwidth. So with this plugin, I could see the diagnostics, and I can actually make decisions on which plugins I can leave and which plugins I am going to delete. In my case, I'm going to delete this too. Here, there is an alert that's showing that some plugins may show artificially high results. Not sure what that means, but this alert might tell me detailed information about this, but I'm not gonna focus on this at the moment. Okay, so as you can see, my website is pretty simple. I just have 12 plugins activated, which are pretty essential. I'm using the Discuss system, the Image Optimizer, the GT Metrix for testing. I can deactivate this one. And just activate it whenever I want to test my website. I'm using the standard Jetpack by WordPress. It has a lot of functionality that's interesting. It's not bad. to have it. And these ones are deactivated. There were some galleries that I were testing. P3 plugin to test my plugin performance. I can deactivate this one or activate it just when I need to activate it. Redirection, very important because I migrated all my URLs. I need this one to be there all the time. This is doing HT access edits all the time. This is a related post plugin, which is very interesting to give suggested posts. Video embeds. This is to make my videos more responsive. This video SEO WordPress. This is a plugin by Yoast that helps optimize my video. It's pretty helpful. It creates an XML video sitemap. The W3 Total Cache, the one I explained from, the widget logic, it uses conditional tags. This is an essential plugin for everyone who wants to do customizable widgets. And the Yoast SEO, this is, the standard SEO and one of the best in the industry. Okay, so this is an overview of my WordPress setup and the tips to optimize your WordPress. Remember, keep it simple. Use at least the least plugins you can. If you can, learn the code, do the customizations by yourself on the code. Make sure you always back up the files you're optimizing or changing, and then test. So if you have any questions, just let me know, and see you next time. Bye.